Episode 1 opens in a devastating battle between the Demon King and 5 heroes, where the minimal gap in strength keeps the ultimate outcome uncertain. To defeat the Demon King, the party must coordinate seamlessly, blocking attacks and unleashing distracting spells to create an opening for the hero. Through this strategy, they inflict massive damage and successfully slay the foe, sending the mighty Demon King crashing down to the joy of all. Following the battle, 4 of the heroes return to the kingdom to a roaring welcome from the citizens, and for their brilliant support in vanquishing the Demon King, the king bestows upon them the prestigious title of the 4 Emperors. In this world, Emperor is a title reserved solely for those of noble blood, so introducing it to the magic community naturally causes a massive stir. After enduring countless hardships, Sage Eftel finally earns the title of Thunder Emperor, weeping tears of joy and expressing deep gratitude for this honor. Feeling it is the moment his entire life's work is recognized in its highest form. Years pass, and Eftel has become a master with several disciples of his own. Today, he tasks the children with maintaining a magic circle outdoors while balancing a stone in their heads. A practice demanding extreme focus that leaves them all gasping for breath upon completion. As Eftel eagerly prepares them to review their spell formulas, Merlin suddenly asks if he wants to take a short break, to which he hesitates before replying that he is not tired at all. Having lost her mother at a young age to the conflict between the 2 factions, Merlin has always evoked a sense of guilt in Eftel, who wonders why she always looks at him with such worried eyes, especially when she enthusiastically requests to learn Tier 6 magic to the surprise of the other children. Hearing this, Eftel asks why she is in such a hurry, pointing out they only recently practiced Tier 5 spells and advising her to keep working in her concentration since a solid foundation is paramount. Though Merlin seems to hide her true thoughts. The next day, after reassuring herself, the young girl ventures alone into the forest to hunt a magic beast, aiming to become the Thunder Emperor's top disciple, so she can lead the people in his stead and allow him to rest peacefully. After hours of searching, Merlin encounters a magic beast on his chest. Realizing she can't run forever, she decides to take a gamble and focuses her mind to cast a powerful Tier 6 lightning strike. However, the attack barely scratches the wolf, and unprepared for this outcome, Merlin is pounced upon. Left trembling in fear with nothing to do but close her eyes and await the end. Right then, Eftel suddenly appears, scolding his young disciple for her disobedience, since he had warned her not to approach the forest. Though Merlin has great talent, she is too hasty, and power achieved in haste is fragile and will inevitably slip away. After forcing the wolf to lose its grip, Eftel decides to end its life right before his disciple's eyes using Tier 10 magic. Back home, Merlin can't stop smiling as she talks about the event, but as Eftel prepares to go to sleep early, he suddenly collapses and coughs up blood. Aware that he is suffering from a terminal illness, Merlin only wanted to quickly become his top disciple to take over his duties. Pleading with him to please take the time to care for his own health, knowing he does not have much time left, Eftel endures his illness for as long as he can. Continuing to practice magic to train talented successors like Merlin, he reflects that while he once aimed to be the strongest in the world, anyone in the path of magic naturally seeks that peak, and he was no exception, yet, he believed he could never truly reach it. Merlin, of course, does not believe this, seeing him as a true powerhouse and wondering if the Thunder Emperor isn't the strongest person alive, but Eftel knows that, compared to those brilliant young geniuses, he is just an old man with one foot in the grave, and during the crusade, he was the only one who had to fight in a desperate, life-or-death struggle. These are heavy burdens he can't share with Merlin, which saddens her. One day, Eftel is surprised to receive a newly perfected thesis in magic aptitude by the Flame Emperor. Determining innate talent had long been deemed impossible, yet the Flame Emperor succeeded. To test Merlin's aptitude, Eftel plucks a few strands of her hair and drops them into a vial of specialized mana water. Instantly all 4 vials change color, but only 2 glow. Based on the intensity of the light and the depth of the color, Eftel determines that Merlin possesses rank aptitude in both water and wind, C rank in fire, and B rank in earth, earning awe from the other children. Having raised Merlin since she was an infant, Eftel knows the test is highly accurate. While the current curriculum forces children to learn all forms of magic before assessing their talents, knowing their innate strengths from birth could make them even stronger. As one of the 4 emperors, Eftel does not need such a test, yet he wants to verify if he ever possessed any natural talent. To reach his current level, Eftel had to work hundreds of times harder than anyone else, but the result of his test is completely colorless and transparent, proving he has absolutely no magical aptitude. Struggling to accept this truth, which meant he never received the blessing of any elemental spirit. Eftel heeds Merlin's advice to try again, but even after 10 attempts, no color ever appears. Eftel had always learned magic slower than others, standing above them solely through relentless effort. And this lack of aptitude was the reason he was gradually left behind by the other three. Realizing this heartbreaking truth, Eftel falls bedridden, refusing to let Merlin kaffa him, because he does not want her to see him in such a pathetic state. He had always believed he would reach the peak of magic, but he could never overcome the wall of natural genius. In the end, there was never any hope from the start. Bitter but with his time depleted, Eftel passes away, only for his reincarnation skill to activate. 55 years ago, he had been granted this skill but had forgotten it. Instead of the afterlife, he meets a goddess who is pleased with his unyielding efforts and offers him 2 skills of his choice for his second reincarnation. Surprisingly, Eftel declines, stating that since his magical knowledge is already in his mind, he only needs time and effort to move forward. Delighted by his resolve, the goddess wishes him a smooth journey and reincarnates him. Upon waking, Eftel is a young boy again, overwhelmed by a flood of memories. When he goes downstairs to look in the mirror, he is suddenly embraced so tightly by his mother that he almost suffocates. Now in his third life, thanks to the goddess's skill, Eftel remains determined to use his past knowledge to reach the peak of magic. After breakfast, he eagerly tests his aptitude again, only to be disappointed when the water remains completely colorless. Just as before, while lying outside to clear his head, a dragon suddenly flies past, its eyes red with rage. Seeing it head toward the capital, Eftel rushes after it, only to realize that as a 4-year-old child, he can do very little. Wishing he had chosen to reincarnate in a form ready for combat, still he decides to try casting his self-created Tier 10 magic. Onto his astonishment, the spell activates, unleashing a single bolt of lightning that effortlessly obliterates the dragon. Looking at the creature's mangled remains, Eftel can hardly believe his eyes, realizing he has fully retained his peak magical power in this new life. 3 years have quickly passed since Eftel's past life consciousness awakened within his young mind, and through his research, he has realized that 4 centuries have flown by since the era he once lived in. Every month, his older brother Fraser visits to deliver living expenses to Eftel and his mother, and seeing his younger brother study so diligently, Fraser plans to bring a whole stock of books as a gift next time. Despite his young age, Eftel displays an intelligence reminiscent of his past self. If their father could see this, he would surely be overjoyed, though ironically, Eftel and his father have never met. His father, the Duke, is a key figure in the kingdom's magical establishment and a descendant of the Thunder Emperor, making Eftel curious about his nature. However, Eftel's mother lacks magical aptitude, which led the other noble ladies to look down on her, despise her, and ultimately exile both mother and son to this remote territory. Because Eftel is unrecognized by his family, he is barred from meeting his father. Yet Fraser, the Duke's second son, could not bear to see them suffer and volunteered to look after them. Although his circumstances are rather complicated, Eftel does not mind much. When asked what path he wants to pursue, Eftel excitedly replies that he wants to attend the Magic Academy in the capital when he turns 15. But his mother forbids it due to his lack of aptitude, planning instead for him to learn swordsmanship and enroll in the Officer Academy. Fraser, who graduated at the top of the Officer Academy, is delighted to hear this. He initially entered the academy to rebel against his family, but later realized it was the perfect fit and pursued it with determination. Noting that magical swordsmen are highly valued in the military, Eftel's mother is overjoyed and asks Fraser to train her son, which finally helps Eftel understand why his brother has been so enthusiastic about teaching him military science and general academics all this time. Fraser had been steering him toward the Officer Academy from the very beginning. While Eftel appreciates his brother's kind intentions, he still wants to study at the Magic Academy to find clues in how to surpass the limits of magic. Fraser agrees to support him in the condition that Eftel must recreate his magic, premising that if Eftel can perform even a small fraction of it, he will help him enter the academy. Not wanting to crush his brother's dreams but seeing no other way, Fraser recites a chant with elaborate hand and body gestures. Expecting something grand, Eftel is surprised to see it is only a Tier 2 wind blade capable of cutting a tree in half. What Fraser proudly calls a miracle is far more ordinary than Eftel expected. Eftel easily casts the wind blade without chanting, generating a terrifying wind pressure that could easily blow away an entire forest. Such chantless casting is a feat only sages after decades of training can achieve, making it completely baffling how a 7-year-old child like Eftel could perform it so effortlessly. Seeing his older brother's utterly stunned face, Eftel quickly apologizes. explaining that he only meant to replicate the spell, but accidentally unleashed a Tia Fa version, even though it is just a low Tia spell. Fraser is driven to panic, not daring to reveal his reincarnation. Eftel tells a lie, asking Fraser to view it as him adopting and applying the knowledge he has read to his brain, while casually adding that he can actually cast up to Tia 10. Hearing this, Fraser faints in the spot, shocked that his little brother can utilize legendary, Linglust arts. His reaction reminds Eftel of the confusion among the soldiers who, not knowing how to explain the dragon's death, concluded that it was slain by a divine miracle of the Gids. That afternoon, Eftel returns home to investigate and realizes that the magical civilization of this era has suffered a severe regression. Compared to the past, the current era is indeed like night and day. Right then, Fraser suddenly wakes up, speaking incoherently to Eftel's confusion, prompting Eftel to spin a tale about a piece of flying wood, hitting him in the head and causing him to faint. To hide his secrets, Eftel decides to follow his brother's lead. Perhaps influenced by his past life skill, indomitable spirit, Eftel has grown highly competitive, forcing himself back up to try again after every defeat. Impressed by this resolve, Fraser trains him in swordsmanship every single day. By the age of 10, Eftel's desire to master martial arts has eclipsed even his passion for magic, and he can easily slash legs into pieces without any obstacle. Today, Fraser secretly organizes a special training session for his younger brother, inviting the former commander of the First Night Order, a massive, muscular man who leaves Eftel astonished. The commander tells the young boy to attack freely, but Eftel simply stands and observes, realizing the man has absolutely no openings. Seeing Eftel's wariness, the commander launches a preemptive strike. Though Eftel can't see the path of the sword, he evades the blow and activates physical reinforcement to strike back, earning praise from the bald commander. "Now I understand why you recommended him," the commander notes. Despite lacking magical aptitude, Eftel can manipulate the mana in his body with astonishing fluidity, just like a true mage or sage. In reality, Eftel could have defeated him with magic in an instant, but winning that way would be meaningless. Realizing he still lacks experience and is naturally overwhelmed by the commander, who tells him he is still 3 years too early to fight seriously. Eftel intentionally loosens his grip and his sword to deflect the incoming strike, using his opponent's momentum to execute a throw. Eftel is surprised to find that the grappling techniques he learned in another world are incredibly useful here, and shocked by the young boy's trick. The commander admits defeat, declaring that Eftel has passed the test. It turns out this opponent is actually the headmaster of the prestigious officer academy, and Eftel is set to become an official cadet when he turns 15. Fraser's surprise leaves Eftel flustered, wondering how things turned out this way. No matter how bad the weather is, Eftel continues to practice swordsmanship outdoors, prompting his mother to worry he might catch a cold. Eftel actually loves rainy days, because they allow him to practice magic alone without being seen. Just as he thinks this, Fraser runs up to check on him, startled by a massive lightning strike. With only 1 year left before Eftel enters the officer academy, his brother is anxious, constantly checking on him and giving advice. In this world, 15 is considered the age of maturity, and since Eftel wishes to pursue magical research rather than join the officer academy, he plans to leave home and head to the magic academy on his own when he turns 15. Today, Fraser brings the news that Eftel is finally going to meet his father, prompting his mother to burst into tears of joy, believing her son has finally achieved enough to be recognized. However, Eftel stopped caring about his father long ago. In his eyes, only his mother and Fraser matter, and he only agrees to go to the estate for their sake. When they meet, the atmosphere is suffocatingly tense. Eftel is the only one brave enough to speak, but the Duke coldly dismisses him as a disgrace, stating that being born of the Thunder Emperor's lineage without magical aptitude makes him nothing but trash, and that their ancestor would weep to see this. Ironically, the Duke has no idea that the ancestor and the portrait on Eftel are one and the same. The Duke claims he summoned them to share good news, leading Eftel to think he might possess some fatherly affection. But the Duke immediately cuts off their living expenses, deeply disappointing the boy. To make matters worse, the Duke forces Eftel to duel one of his brothers to prove his strength, demanding to see if Eftel has what it takes to avoid embarrassing the family at the officer academy, revealing this to be his true motive all along. Episode 3 begins with Fraser warning Eftel to be careful, even though it is just a spa, because his opponent is a master swordsman, advising him to surrender immediately if he can't win. Although Eftel finds this highly annoying, he has no choice but to face him. His half-brother wants to crush Eftel from the very start, choosing a heavy, solid training weapon instead of a standard wooden sword, where one careless blow to the head could easily fracture his skull. When Eftel questions his motives, the arrogant sibling furiously explains that he wants to personally teach Eftel and his mother a lesson, sneering that a foolish mother naturally gives birth to a dim-witted son, and that no one in the family likes them due to the lack of magical talent. He vows to dispose of Eftel first before dealing with his mother, confidently letting Eftel strike first while mocking him, which only infuriates Eftel further. Angered that such trash is his descendant, Eftel immediately launches a relentless assault that shatters his opponent's composure and forces him to struggle just to parry the basic strikes. Eftel then reinforces his physical body to completely overwhelm his arrogant sibling, aiming directly at his face to end the duel and leave everyone stunned. Eftel warns his sibling that if he ever insults his mother again, he will end him, before turning to his mother, with absolute gentleness, to tell her it is time to go home. Before leaving, Eftel does not forget to thank his father, leaving the Duke highly unsettled but advising Eftel to do his best at the Professor Academy next year. 2 weeks pass peacefully, and one afternoon, Fraser suddenly visits while carrying a baby, apologizing for the untimely disruption. He explains that to prepare for the decisive battle against the neighboring country, the royal guard under his command has been tasked with securing the capital. But the minister's faction is exploiting this instability to plot the assassination of the crown prince. To ensure security, Fraser mobilized many guards, but southern barbarians suddenly raided the capital and caused chaos, forcing Fraser to bring the crown prince here for safety. As Eftel knows, the king has 2 sons, the younger is the reigning king, while the elder serves as the minister, and since the current king has no male heir, the throne was set to pass to the minister's legitimate son until the birth of the crown prince changed everything. Fraser believes his father, the Duke, is the one who paved the way for the barbarians to enter the capital. As the Duke would lose the most promotion on power if the succession changed, Fraser decides the best course of action is to take his highness to the main army stationed across the border, and since time is of the essence, they must leave the next morning. Feeling uneasy, Eftel volunteers to go with them. 400 years ago, the king had supplied materials for the campaign to slay the demon king, meaning Eftel still owes the royal family a great favor and must step in to protect the country. Eftel feels guilty for causing his mother worry, but he can't forgive his father. During their journey, the group senses danger because the forest is far too quiet, and as they quickly try to leave, they are shocked to discover the Duke's massive mage car waiting at the edge of the forest. With a force of this scale making advancement impossible, they try to retreat, only to find the area behind them has been set in fire to box them in. Having no other choice, Fraser decides to step forward unarmed to reason with his father, still believing the Duke is not entirely evil and pleading with him to return to the capital, which prompts the Duke to personally show up, filling Fraser with hope that his father is willing to talk. Far from showing any fatherly affection, the Duke coldly views Fraser as an obstacle, callously striking down his own son before ordering his men to burn the entire forest. The headmaster is horrified to realize the enemy is using the legendary grand magic of the 4 emperors and tries to hold Eftel back, warning him that no one can withstand such tier 6 spells. Indeed, the descending lightning disintegrates Fraser in an instant. Witnessing his brother's demise fills Eftel with pure hatred, and in his rage, he marches into the battlefield alone, despite the headmaster's desperate attempts to stop him. Eftel immediately extinguishes the raging flames using tier 9 glacial prison magic, leaving everyone utterly stunned as the entire forest freezes in a flash. Eftel is deeply disappointed by the weakness of his modern descendants, lamenting that he had once believed he taught his children how to use magic and fight properly. Seeing Eftel expose himself, the Duke orders his mage car to attack, gloating that the boy will be incinerated by thousands of tier 5 explosive arrows, but Eftel emerges completely unscathed, protected by a permanent passive barrier. Sighing at the low magical standards of this era, since the mages can't even recognize his barrier, Eftel watches as the Duke unleashes their trump card of tier 6 lightning strikes. Eftel easily neutralizes the attack with a tier 7 magic shield before launching into a ferocious counterattack, utilizing a technique that infuses his sword with magic to cut down the enemies from a distance. As the soldiers flee in terror, Eftel shows no mercy, deciding to let them witness the true pinnacle of power, a tier 10 lightning spell that commands the heavens to annihilate the entire army. The force is wiped out in an instant, leaving only the Duke and Eftel's half-brother. Eftel quickly electrocutes the babbling half-brother into unconsciousness. The trembling Duke demands to know how Eftel dares commit treason, but Eftel, refusing to spare the garbage who killed his own son, shicks the Duke and hands him over to the imperial court. A few days later, the Duke and his eldest son are hanged before the public for their attempted coup. Eftel then rushes to the hospital upon hearing that Freysa survived thanks to a family heirloom necklace, which Eftel recognizes as an item he used in his past life. Overjoyed by his brother's survival, Eftel is pleased when Freysa officially becomes the new duke, retaining his family's title due to his heroism in protecting the crown prince. Later, when Eftel demonstrates his power by casually destroying a nearby mountain with Tier 7 spells, Freysa and the headmaster are left speechless. Yet they accept Eftel without forcing him to explain his power, agreeing to keep his secret to prevent the world from falling into chaos. Fully supporting his dream of entering the Magic Academy, they promise to train him until he turns 15, leaving Eftel deeply grateful for their kindness, even if he humorously wonders if they really need to slap his back so hard. Upon turning 15, Eftel decides to leave his mother's side to freely pursue his own path, and at their farewell, his mother can't hold back her tears, embracing him tightly as Eftel tearfully thanks her for raising him for 15 years. The headmaster also weeps loudly, being the noisiest of the group, and when Freysa tries to comfort him, he insists it is just dust in his eyes. Once again, Eftel sincerely bows and thanks everyone for their support, leaving home with a firm determination to overcome the wall known as talent, and march straight to the pinnacle of magic. After several days of travel, Eftel stops at a tea shop and happens to run into a well-known mage named Wild Flame. When a pitiable old teacher begs him for help, Wild Flame shows clear annoyance at being disturbed while reading. "I hope you understand that the value of each second in my life on yours is completely different," he sneers, his arrogance stemming from achieving an rank in the Adventurers Guild at just 20 years old. In contrast, the old teacher, despite being 50, is still only a C-rank mage and is openly looked down upon, with Wild Flame scoffing that a piece of trash like him is only fit to teach children before dismissing the meal the old man and his students prepared. To make matters worse, tonight is the night the slave brand and the demon girl owned by Wild Flame will fully bind to her body, after which he can do whatever he wants with her, reminding Eftel of how Merlin would have suffered a similar fate years ago had he not rescued her. Suddenly, a man rushes in a panic to report that a giant orc has appeared, and since no one in this remote countryside is strong enough to handle it, the situation is critical. The old teacher speaks up to reassure everyone, urging them to stay calm because the rank adventurer, Lord Wild Flame, is here to handle it, confidently noting that a giant orc is only a B-rank monster or higher, which is nothing to worry about. Wild Flame basks in the admiration of the swooning local women, viewing his opponent as a low-class creature. The arrogant Wild Flame confidently chants and unleashes his Tier 4 Holy Flame spell, expecting to roast the minster in a single blow, while bragging that such magic can't be witched for free. Suddenly the crowd falls silent as they realize the orc is completely unharmed, leaving Wild Flame horrified to find his spell did not inflict a single scratch. Looking closer, he realizes to his horror that it is a berserker orc. His magic can only handle common variants, but this individual is far out of his league, prompting him to turn and flee. Worse still, he traps the villagers inside a barrier with the minster, cowardly declaring that a noble being like himself can't die in a place like this, and commanding them to serve as his bait. Disgusted, Eftel uses a Tier 6 spell to shatter the barrier, and although he wishes to avoid drawing attention, he cannot ignore the danger and steps in to save everyone. He decides to disguise a powerful Tier 9 spell under a Tier 3 formula, so observers will think it is just a basic Tier 3 attack. Leaping to dodge the minster's strike, Eftel executes his plan. However, to his surprise, even the disguised Tier 3 component is so potent that before the spell is even half finished, the minster is completely roasted. Wild Flame's Tier 4 spell is far inferior to Eftel's Tier 3 attack, because the gap in their true strength is immense, resulting in an attack that actually carries the power of a Tier 5 magic. Eftel worries he will have to explain his power, but surprisingly, the villagers are simply drawn to the delicious aroma of roasted orc meat, wondering if it is edible. Before leaving, Eftel reprimands the arrogant adventurer, advising him to learn some respect for his elders, since the old teacher actually understands magic far better than he does, bringing the old man to tears of gratitude. Of course, Eftel does not overlook Wild Flame's attempted murder, warning him that since he committed a crime, he can no longer own a slave, telling him to free the demon girl and turn himself in, leaving the arrogant mage with no choice but to bow his head and comply. The freed demon girl, Anastasia, has fallen in love with Eftel, following him to shyly plead for a favor, asking him to become her master to prevent her from being hunted down as a runaway slave. Seeing her kneeling and begging, Eftel's heart softens. While slaves regain their freedom when their bond is severed, if bad people discover her and force a contract, she could face an even worse fate. After losing a war against the human kingdom long ago, the demon race has been enslaved for generations. And as a descendant of the demon royal family, Anastasia is actually a distant relative of Merlin. Eftel is astonished to confirm that Merlin, the Tuptia demon mage he raised 400 years ago, is now the famous head of the prestigious Magic Academy, making him overjoyed beyond words and marveling at the longevity of the demon race. Agreeing to become her master to look after Merlin's relative, Eftel decides to call her Anna for convenience. His plan is to take the Academy's entrance exam held in the city tomorrow, so they first search for a place to eat. At the mention of food, Anna's stomach growls with hunger, prompting Eftel to take her to an expensive restaurant, assuring her he will cover the bill. However, upon entering, they are immediately met with derogatory remarks from other patrons complaining about a dirty slave. Seeing Anna sit on the floor, Eftel gently tells her to take a seat, but because slave rules dictate she must remain on the floor to serve him, Eftel uses his authority as her master to order her to sit opposite him, which she shyly accepts. Just then, a waiter approaches to warn them that slaves are strictly prohibited from sitting at tables in this high-end establishment and doubts Eftel's ability to pay. In response, Eftel calmly drops 3 dragon stones, each worth over 500 gold coins, in the table, prompting the waiter to apologize profusely once he realizes Eftel is a wealthy elite in disguise. Eftel generously tips him a whole stone, instructing him to serve them the highest grade meat, silently thanking his mother for forcing him to bring his father's dragon stones along. Enjoying her first lavish meal in a VIP room, Anna hesitantly wonders if a slave is allowed such luxury, but Eftel urges her to eat freely as a welcoming gesture, telling her to speak up if she dislikes anything on to discard her slave habits, making Anna incredibly grateful to have chosen him. The next morning, Eftel is pleased to see Anna in the new clothes he bought her, and since graduating from the academy guarantees a lifetime of good employment, Eftel encourages Anna to register as well, confident in her exceptional magical talent. While the other applicants expect the first round of the exam to be easy, they are instantly given a rude awakening when the practors announce that the first round is a survival battle to be held right in the spit. To pass the first round, the candidates must fight until only 5 remain, and since weapons, magic, and any tactics are permitted, the tension is palpable as anyone nicked out of the ring is instantly disqualified. The examiner, an experienced B-rank adventurer who only came for the paycheck, expects nothing from the rookies, assuming Eftel and Anna will be targeted first as the weakest looking, but he is stunned when 9 applicants are launched into the sky in an instant. Realizing the young boy is effortlessly utilizing physical reinforcement, the remaining candidates quickly bond together, turning Eftel into their common enemy. Seeing the crowd gang up on her master, Anna immediately blows them away with a Tier 3 spell, leaving everyone dumbfounded by her formidable magic and wondering why such a powerful mage is testing here. While the examiner is impressed, he mocks Eftel, laughing at his apparent lack of basic knowledge by asking if he must chant to cast magic. Not wanting Anna to lose face, Eftel demonstrates his skills by easily casting 4 Tier 4 spells simultaneously without chanting, blowing away all remaining candidates and accidentally destroying a chunk of the arena structure, leaving the examiner speechless. Thus, the duo easily passes the first round without breaking a sweat, and since Eftel thoroughly mastered magical theory in his past life, the written exam is incredibly easy for him. After submitting their papers, Anna is shocked to learn her master completed the entire exam pack. Because the test is elective, candidates only need to answer questions within their specialization, but Eftel, unaware of this rule, completed everything, scoring a record-breaking 958 points. Eftel's incredible score on name, which matches the legendary Thunder Emperor, spark accusations of cheating, but when the examiner steps in to confirm Eftel's ability to cast multiple spells simultaneously, the staff is left wondering if the legendary Thunder Emperor has indeed been reincarnated. When the results are announced, Anna is thrilled to find she has passed into the special track, happily hugging her master before realizing everyone is staring. Though Eftel warmly congratulates her on notes, she can now live as a normal student. Strangely, Eftel's examinee number is missing from the board, leading him to wonder if they secretly tested his lack of magic aptitude and failed him. But Anna discovers a notice in a nearby pillar, revealing Eftel has been granted direct admission as the chief representative of special students, although his tuition and meals are fully covered alongside special stipends. Eftel is dismayed to learn the role requires him to participate in promotional events and school exchanges, essentially acting as a mascot rather than a student. since he only wants to quietly use the library after school to find a way to break through his magical limits. While contemplating how to decline, Eftel suddenly spits a familiar, beautifully matured figure and quickly hides behind a pillar, recognizing her instantly as Merlin. Eftel is genuinely delighted to see how much she has grown, but he avoids a direct confrontation to keep his reincarnation a secret, knowing that stepping into the light would only unleash a storm of unwanted attention. Resolving to lie low, he departs to explore the campus with Anna, but in a fleeting instant, Merlin senses her former master's unique presence. Her sharp intuition acting as a compass as she turns to scan the crowd, finding only 2 young students nearby, she chases after them on Blix the path. Directly asking Eftel if he has a connection to the legendary Thunder Emperor, Eftel, determined to remain in the shadows, acts completely clueless in front of the gathering crowd and, feigning extreme hunger, quickly takes Anna's hand to escape for lunch. During their meal, Anna is shocked to learn that the woman was actually Lord Merlin, both her distant relative and her ancestral matriarch from 10 generations ago. Realizing that the generational gap is like a vast ocean, which explains why they share no physical resemblance. Meanwhile, Eftel wonders why his former disciple is here instead of running her own academy, a question answered at the opening ceremony when Merlin is introduced as a guest of Anna. This guest appearance immediately shatters Eftel's hopes of remaining in the shadows when the academy suddenly calls him to the stage to speak as the chief representative. His name matching the legendary sovereign naturally draws the spotlight, fueling a wildfire of rumors among the students and looking Merlin's keen eyes directly into him. After the ceremony, Eftel's sudden popularity among the female students leaves Anna visibly jealous. But the quiet moment is interrupted when Merlin approaches with a dead serious expression. Stripping away her usual composure, Merlin sits down and directly asks Eftel if he knows the concept of reincarnation, causing his heart to skip a beat at an intuition as sharp as a double-edged sword. She points out that Eftel's test answers read as if the legendary Thunder Emperor himself had taken the exam for amusement. Utilizing ancient formulas and theories from 4 centuries ago, to bridge this temporal gap, Eftel spins a fictional tale of a secret lover with whom the Thunder Emperor fathered a child, explaining that this hidden bloodline withdrew from society to quietly hone their magic in isolation, which is why Merlin has never heard of them. However, when Eftel adds that the Thunder Emperor actually possessed no natural talent and passed away in despair, Merlin loses her composure, emotionally pulling Eftel's head into a tight embrace, while warning him not to speak of such classified family history in public. Presenting himself as a 13th generation descendant, Eftel successfully throws her off. Yet while Merlin is saddened to have been kept in the dark about her master's struggles, she is also fired up, challenging him to a magical duel that afternoon to see who is the true successor capable of walking the path to the absolute peak of magic. Eftel's first instinct is to decline, but after careful consideration, he accepts the match, eager to witness the magical fruits his beloved disciple has harvested over the 400-year separation. News of the duel between the freshman and Lord Merlin spreads like wildfire throughout the academy, though Eftel is heavily underestimated by the crowd who view his opponent as an insurmountable mountain. Undeterred by the chatter, Eftel accepts the challenge, eager to witness the magical fruits his beloved disciple has harvested over 4 centuries, which is considered a golden opportunity to learn for aspiring mages and a breathtaking spectacle for the students, though Anna remains unimpressed due to her jealousy over the intense female attention Eftel is receiving. Before starting, both agree to trade a few probing blows to gauge each other's strength, yet before the words even settle, Eftel immediately hurls a Tier 6 fireball without chanting, seemingly ending the match in the blink of an eye to the crowd's absolute shock. Eftel knows Merlin wouldn't fall to such a simple blow, watching in admiration as she instantly constructs a solid defensive barrier to block the impact, proving that her mastery of Tier 6 magic is a testament to her genius. As Eftel's direct disciple, Merlin has her own pride. Replicating his style, she unleashes an equally powerful Tier 6 fireball, proudly declaring herself as the one personally trained by Lord Eftel. However, her pride turns to irritation when she sees her opponent's unwavering composure, prompting her to soar into the air and fire another devastating blast, leaving the audience terrified that a friendly match has escalated so fiercely. Having mastered the Thunder Emperor school, Eftel easily channels high-tier spells without chanting, instantly freezing the surrounding flames and projecting a Tier 7 ice lance straight at Merlin, who is stunned, unaware that Eftel is the very architect of the style she uses. While defending drains a massive amount of Merlin's energy, Eftel effortlessly rains down spell after spell, pushing her into a kana with an attack of exceptionally refined mana. Merlin blocks it with all her might, proudly claiming her Tia 7 magic is just as refined. But a spiderweb of crocs appearing in her shield tells a different story, because her spell formula still possesses minor flaws. Merlin realizes this combat style is identical to her master's, acting it as an aggressive assault, but as a gentle guide pointing out her weaknesses, prompting her to summon a second Tia 7 barrier to completely stop the spear. However, dual casting forces Merlin to pour all her mental focus into the formulas, leaving her temporarily lightheaded. And as Eftel prepares to seize this opening to end the duel, Merlin suddenly uses Tier 8 teleportation to appear behind him, unleashing a searing blast that seems to consume him. Yet, only Merlin realizes that Eftel has already read her like an open book. Having anticipated her movement, he prepared his own defensive displacement, effortlessly countering the techniques she spent 400 years polishing. Rather than being discouraged, Merlin can't hide her nostalgic smile, declaring that if he can withstand her ultimate secret technique, she will gladly concede, before unleashing the Tier 8 Thunder Gid's hammer. Eftel could easily dodge the massive blow, yet a lingering sense of unease makes him hesitate as he observes closely, discovering that his disciple is quietly using her left hand to dual cast, the true secret technique she wants to show him. What is truly remarkable is that Merlin can cast from 3 different positions simultaneously, granting her unimaginable speed. And she can even coordinate 4 Tier 8 spells at once, a high wire act of mental strength that fills Eftel with deep excitement. Never in his lives has he witnessed such outstanding technique, proving she is truly the star pupil he has always been proud of, and beyond that, like a beloved daughter to him, acknowledging her relentless efforts since his departure. Eftel decides to respond with the Thunder Emperor's legendary Tia 10 magic. While ordinary mages struggle to maintain consciousness during simple dual casting, Merlin comfortably unleashes 4 massive spells. Yet her Thunder Gid's hammer is still completely swallowed when Eftel summons a colossal bolt of lightning that shakes the entire academy. Having witnessed this absolute power in the past, Merlin is struck by how perfectly Eftel mirrors her master. Realizing they have tested each other enough, Eftel deactivates the spell mid-air, causing the terrifying residual energy to dissolve into thin air as if it never existed. Though completely defeated, Merlin is far from disappointed, knowing only one person in the world can cast this Tia 10 spell. And when she asks once more if he is indeed the reincarnation of Lord Eftel, he yields to her sharp intuition and admits the truth. He approaches his crying disciple and gently pats her head, praising her for not slacking a single day over the last 4 centuries, which causes Merlin to weep tears of absolute joy as she finally reunites with him, reverting back to a crying child in front of her beloved master. Despite living for over 400 years, their reunion is interrupted when Anna rushes over calling Eftel her master, which temporarily irritates Merlin until she learns that Anna is a rescued slave. Prompting her to warmly welcome the girl into their circle, Merlin then tries to warn Eftel about the approaching crowd, but it is already too late as the entire student body surrounds them. Begging Eftel to teach them his magic, to protect Eftel's dream of a quiet academic sanctuary, Merlin quickly grabs his hand and pulls him away from the crowd, with Anna hastily following them into a nearby forest where his old mansion stands as a living monument of their past, preserved so meticulously by Merlin over the last 4 centuries that it looks recently renovated. Eftel stays to rest at the estate while Merlin handles the paperwork, officially registering Eftel as her adopted son on honor as her direct disciple in paper to shield them from outside interference, using her authority as headmaster. Merlin arranges for Eftel and Anna to instantly transfer to her own magic academy so they can quietly study and eat lunch together without any disturbance. Eftel accepts her thoughtful proposal and gently embraces Merlin to express his gratitude. And though Anna feels a slight pinch of jealousy seeing they close bond, she is genuinely happy for their heartwarming reunion. Since Eftel has gone to the trouble of mastering swordsmanship in his current life, he decides to retrieve a weapon from his old treasury while Merlin is busy finalizing their school transfer. In their way, Eftel and Anna are blocked by a towering gatekeeper, a djinn serving as the vault guardian, who coldly warns them that no one is permitted to pass. Eftel calmly explains that he only came to retrieve his sword, the Thunder Slasher, which is stored inside, but the gatekeeper is furious that a young boy would dare claim ownership of the sword of legend, brought back from the Demon King's castle by the legendary sage. Eftel, assuming they are Merlin's disciples, the gatekeeper warns them that only Merlin and Sage Eftel are allowed entry, punching the wall in frustration and yelling that Eftel would have been beaten severely if he weren't Merlin's favorite. The arrogant Jin openly disdains Eftel's past incarnation, claiming he was a talentless weakling who must have used dirty tricks to steal his seat among the four emperors. Unmoved, Eftel calmly asks where the sword is, and the gatekeeper scoffs, pointing out that it lies under a powerful magical barrier that only a master like Merlin could ever hope to break. To the gatekeeper's sheer disbelief, Eftel nonchalantly approaches and dispels the Tier 8 protection as easily as breathing, picking up the sword as if he always owned it. Just then, Merlin returns, overhearing the gatekeeper's insults, and angrily threatens to erase him for calling her an old lady, though she instantly becomes sweet and obedient when she turns to Eftel. Sensing Eftel's terrifying presence is identical to the legendary sovereign, the gatekeeper shivers in realization, bowing deeply in apology. While looking at the sword, Anna feels a faint sense of unease. A double-edged sword of hidden secrets she decides to keep to herself as they head down into the city to ship for magic tomes on uniforms. Lyda, a staff member, suggests they participate in a city-wide treasure hunt, where the grand prize is a relaxing het spring trip. Seeing Anna staring at the poster, Eftel and Merlin assume she wants to visit the het spring, though in truth, she is eyeing a specific treasure printed in the poster. Merlin is confused and wants to ask, but Eftel gently stops her, stating that Anna doesn't have to force herself to share, because the treasures are concealed by cloaking magic. Eftel subtly interferes with the caster's concealment formula using a Tier 5 magic disruption, easily uncovering a mountain of treasures wherever they go. Deeply moved by her master's kindness, Anna tearfully confesses her true desire. The treasure she wanted is a dill that perfectly resembles Eftel's gentle smile, which she wants to keep in her room. That night, Merlin visits Eftel to report that she took a bath with Anna to inspect her body, ensuring she was fit to satisfy him, which causes Eftel to cough in embarrassment and playfully nick his disciple's head for her dirty thoughts. In truth, Merlin had spitted a highly unusual slave brand in Anna's body, and knowing the immense danger associated with keeping her despite this mock, she questions if Eftel still intends to keep Anna by his side. Eftel, fully aware of the risks, remains unwavering in his decision, prompting the obedient Merlin to yield to his resolve, choosing to protect Eftel's quiet sanctuary and object no further. A few days later, Eftel arrives at the academy only to find himself the target of a hostile current of sneers and jeers from the other students, which is hardly surprising since this prestigious institution is exclusively for demons, making a human newcomer an immediate anomaly. Eftel pays no mind to the hostility, determined to keep his eyes on his ultimate goal of researching magic and enjoying a quiet school life. But upon entering the classroom, he is met with blatant disdain as the arrogant demon Abel scoffs at the school for admitting a foul-smelling human, sparking an outrage in Anna that she barely manages to contain under Eftel's soothing guidance. The class's curiosity peaks when Maria asks how he managed to enroll, only for Abel to cut her F, arrogantly claiming Eftel must have used his family's wealth to slip in through the back door, and because this accusation is technically true, Eftel can only accept the insult with a silent smile, which only makes Abel feel further ignored. Abel runts that their elite classroom is reserved for superior races like demons and elves, and that sharing a table with a lower-class human is completely unacceptable, yet Eftel simply tunes out the noise and takes a seat. Maria approaches to warn him that while she doesn't discriminate based in race, she does based in ability, stating that their pride won't allow them to study alongside a talentless weakling and advising Eftel to stay out of their sight. This natural arrogance stems from the fact that demons possess far superior innate magic compared to humans. Eftel's brother Fraser had to work tirelessly just to cast Tier 2 spells, whereas Anna, despite her modesty, easily commands Tier 3 magic. When the lesson begins, the atmosphere shifts dramatically as Merlin enters to announce that she will personally serve as their new homeroom teacher. Abel smugly assumes she stepped down to tutor elite students like himself, but his grand illusion is shattered when she reveals she has no idea who he is, declaring that she is here solely to teach the human boy sitting in the back. The class gapes in disbelief, whispering that Eftel must be backed by a powerful shadow, though Merlin is deeply disappointed by Abel's narrow-mindedness, urging everyone to observe Eftel closely as he will surely shatter all their preconceptions about humans. Before offering him a playful wink that triggers a wave of envy, Eftel realizes his dream of a peaceful academy life has vanished in the blink of an eye, and during recess, Anna discovers Eftel conned by Abel and his group, who are spreading crude rumors about Merlin having a preference for young human boys and micking Eftel as her favorite toy. Although annoyed by their childish provocations, Eftel simply laughs at F to de-escalate the situation, quietly noting how troublesome these brats are. Later, the school announces an inter-class competition, and the only vacant slit in their class is for a magical swordsman. Knowing his disciple is aiming directly at him, Eftel tries to hide under his desk as Merlin threatens to eliminate him if no one steps forward. Just as Eftel closes his eyes in resignation, Abel confidently volunteers his top-tier swordsmanship, but before Eftel can breathe a sigh of relief, Anna raises her hand and completely turns the tables by nominating Eftel for the position instead. The class immediately begins to fear for Eftel's life, and looking at Abel's malicious grin, it is clear he is plotting something vicious, leaving Eftel's peaceful sanctuary shattered and his fate hanging by a thread.
With no other choice, Eftel is forced to face Abe in the selection match for the inter-class tournament at the Altina Merlin Magic Academy. Merlin announces to the gathered students that they will hold a mic battle to compete for the position of magic swordsman, selecting the stronger of the two. Before the duel begins, Merlin reminds them that magic is strictly forbidden, meaning they must prove their strength using nothing but their swords. Eftel is not enthusiastic about this at all, unable to understand why these troublesome situations keep happening to him. And he glances at Anastasia, who avoids his gaze out of a clear sense of guilt. Just before the match starts, Eftel remains distracted, prompting Abe to warn him to draw his sword, as he has no interest in defeating an unarmed opponent. This honorable attitude leaves a positive impression in the onlookers, who assume the human, Eftel, is simply frozen in fear. Eftel notes that Abe seems quite strung, which actually suits his plan perfectly. He intends to throw a light feint kick to make Abe dodge, trade blows for a while, and then lose in purpose. However, Eftel's plan completely falls apart the moment the match begins. The kick that was meant to be a simple feint lands directly in Abe's face, leaving everyone, including Eftel himself, utterly shocked. Eftel never expected the blow to connect, let alone cause major damage with just a feint, yet Abe feints instantly, and Merlin declares Eftel the winner. While the crowd struggles to make sense of what happened, Maria believes she has figured it out, explaining that Merlin is likely trying to reform the magic swordsman curriculum, recognizing that while humans might lack magical prowess, they excel in physical close combat. Believing this explains the special treatment Eftel receives, the crowd agrees, and Eftel decides it is wiser to play along to keep a low profile. When Maria asks him about it, he simply goes with the flow and confirms her theory, though Abe is far from pleased. Later, after returning home from school, Eftel and Anastasia sit down for dinner, but it is clear that something is still weighing heavily in Anastasia's mind. And she decides to speak up before they even touch their food. Anastasia mentions that Eftel easily defeated a truly powerful opponent that day, though Eftel quietly thinks Abe was actually quite weak. Keeping the thought to himself out of respect, Anastasia then asks him what he would do if he ever found himself in a situation where physical strength was completely useless. Seeing how deeply worried she is, Eftel pauses his meal to genuinely reflect in her question, eventually telling her that he would simply do everything in his power to ensure a positive outcome. Anastasia remarks that such a response could only come from someone truly strong, and asks if he would maintain that resolve even when facing a terrible, unchangeable destiny. Eftel confirms this without a second thought, explaining that this is exactly what he is doing now, having come to this place to mend something that was supposedly beyond repair. Anastasia is not surprised by his answer, finding it yet another reminder of how incredible he is. When Eftel tries to downplay it, Anastasia points out that she is still just a slave, feeling useless, because she can't do anything to repay him for all he has done. With this in her mind, she stands up, approaches Eftel, and begins to undress, letting him know that she has never been with anyone before, and offering to serve him in that physical sense if he desires. Eftel immediately spits out his drink in shock and panics, quickly gathering her clothes to hand them back, while insisting she does not need to do such a thing. Despite his protests, Anastasia undresses completely, forcing Eftel to keep his eyes shut as he explains that, while he appreciates her gratitude, he simply wants her to eat as his equal rather than serve him. Understanding his true feelings, Anastasia puts her clothes back on, and Eftel tries to act as though nothing happened. Returning to the table to mention that the meat is getting cold, Anastasia smiles and agrees to eat, but as her mind finds peace and she begins to enjoy the meal, she can't help but shed tears of relief, prompting Eftel to gently comfort her. The following day, however, the Academy's guardian spirit is found crying uncontrollably in apology as Merlin informs Eftel that the legendary sword Reikiri has been stolen alongside several other treasures. Merlin explains that because it was Anastasia who approached, the guardian spirit let her pass, after which she vanished. This confirms Merlin's prior suspicion that the secondary mark beneath Anastasia's slave crest was indeed a theft brand. And Eftel realizes that this compulsion contract has finally been activated. Under normal circumstances, slave contracts prohibit masters from giving orders that would cause the slave's death or force them to commit crimes. However, a forbidden method exists to bypass these restrictions: the special slave brand. The mere creation of such a brand is a serious crime, leaving Merlin bewildered as to why Anastasia possesses one. Eftel does not know the reason but clarifies that he took her in fully aware of the risks. On simply accepting the loss of the stolen goods would solve nothing. Merlin immediately senses his intentions, which Eftel confirms. He plans to break Anastasia's special slave contract. Merlin is deeply alarmed by the idea and asks if he truly comprehends the consequences, reminding him that a divine contractual beast once destroyed an entire small nation when such a contract was forcibly severed. Eftel, already well aware of this danger, explains that the spell keeping the brand active is anchored by a contractual beast referred to as a gid. And to break the seal, he must defeat this entity in battle. Should he fail, the very country he once saved in his past life, as the Thunder Emperor, could be entirely obliterated. When Merlin questions why he would risk so much for a girl who seemingly betrayed him, Eftel smiles, stating that from the moment he took Anastasia under his protection, he committed to shielding her until the very end, especially since he knows she would never betray him of her own free will. Understanding his resolve, Merlin stands by him. Eftel then reveals that he anticipated this turn of events and placed tracking magic in the stolen treasures, meaning she is currently delivering them to her true master. Without wasting another moment, Eftel sets a Seth to rescue her. Meanwhile, Anastasia presents the stolen artifacts to her master, A.B., who is thrilled that she successfully stole from the old witch Merlin as well as Eftel. Abe grins maliciously, praising her work and expressing astonishment at her success, particularly in delivering Reikiri, a weapon wielded by a subordinate of the Demon King 400 years ago, which he considers an even greater prize than the treasures. Of the Edwards family, Abe, still spotting a visible bruise in his face, asks Anastasia if she had known that Eftel, whom he looks down on as a member of an inferior race, was actually so powerful. Anastasia hesitates. She recalls that Abe was the very person who demanded she arranged the Mick bottle to confront Eftel in the first place. Although she had tried to warn him of Eftel's immense strength, Abe had ignored her, ordering her to obey regardless. Realizing that trying to reason with him is entirely pointless, she simply lies and says she had no idea Eftel was that strong. Putting her guilt aside, she asks if this delivery will truly be her final task. Abe confirms this, explaining that the 3 artifacts she brought, combined with those secured by her older sister, bring the total to 5, fulfilling the required quota of 5 artifacts per generation under their contract. While this brings Anastasia a brief glimmer of hope, Abe quickly crushes it by explaining that the special slave brand carries a far deeper weight. He reveals that the curse of the brand, which plagues the Branova clan as punishment for slaughtering their fellow demons, will never truly vanish. If she ever has a child, the curse will inevitably pass down to them, forcing her descendants to endure the exact same fate. Nevertheless, satisfied with her success today, Abe tells her he will consult his father regarding her future, instructing her to wait in her quarters until morning. Once alone, Anastasia lies down, overcome by the intense disgust and nausea that always accompany her thefts and reports. Though today feels significantly worse because she betrayed Eftel, despite the pain, she feels a lingering sense of relief that the ordeal is finally over, which leads her to think of her sister. This triggers a memory from her childhood in her home village, where she lived with her father. In the flashback, her older sister, Tatiana, returns home for a visit, but Anastasia reacts with hostility. Tatiana behaves cruelly toward young Anastasia, telling her she is unwanted, urging her to leave. on blaming her for their mother's death during childbirth. As Anastasia cries and screams back in anger, their father steps in to defuse the argument. Tatiana then hands their father some money, noting it is a small contribution to help with the family finances, prompting their father to apologize for how difficult things have been for her. However, Anastasia remains resentful, unable to believe that after 6 months away wearing such luxurious clothing, this meager sum is all Tatiana has to show, to which Tatiana coldly replies that the money would be more than enough, if not for the burden of supporting Anastasia. In the memory, young Anastasia tells Tatiana to shut up, demanding to know why she even bothers returning home if she hates her so much, pointing out that she does nothing for the family and only complains before vanishing again. Believing Tatiana does not care about her at all, Anastasia declares her hatred, but Tatiana merely smiles, turns, and walks away. Frustrated and unable to comprehend why her sister smiled, Anastasia screams after her, telling her never to return. Anastasia spends years failing to understand that expression, until the day 2 carriages arrive in the village, dripping a booty into the ground, the corpse of her sister. Anastasia rushes to her side in tears, staring at Tatiana's pale, bruised skin and wondering what could have happened. Before she can't even grieve, a strange ring of light binds her wrist and lifts her into the air, bringing her face to face with 2 noble demons. Abe and his father. Abe asks if she is the next vessel, which the older noble confirms, while Anastasia's father immediately kneels, offering his second daughter to serve them in Tatiana's place. Abe laughs mockingly, calling him a despicable father, uncaring of Anastasia's confusion. Abe's father orders the transfer ritual to begin, and they drag Anastasia and her sister's corpse to the ritual chamber. Despite her struggles, both sisters are placed inside a magic circle to transfer Tatiana's special slave brand to Anastasia's body. Abe's father explains that Tatiana made a fatal mistake while trying to fulfill the contract, and that from now on, Anastasia is a slave to the Potts clan. He reveals that her family must deliver 5 rare magic artifacts in each generation, passing this burden down to the next forever. Abe commands her to infiltrate noble households as a slave to steal rare magic items, noting that since Tatiana only delivered 3 before her death, Anastasia must steal the remaining 2 while avoiding being caught and killed like her sister. As Abe laughs maniacally, Anastasia realizes with tears of despair that Tatiana was murdered because of this curse, finally uncovering the dark truth. 300 years ago, her ancestors attacked and tried to rib the Potts clan, and as punishment for the ultimate crime of killing fellow demons, her lineage was bound to this eternal subjugation. Tatiana had known the whole truth and, sacrificing everything, resolved to shoulder their family's curse alone, even going so far as to make Anastasia hate her, so her eventual demise would not cause her younger sister too much pain. Once the transfer ritual of the past concluded, Anastasia realized how foolish she had been, weeping and begging for forgiveness from the sister she had treated so harshly and whose silent burden she had never understood. Back in the present, 3 years later, Anastasia finds solace in the belief that their long torment is finally at an end, now that the quota is met. However, her relief is short-lived when Abe confronts her with a cruel twist. She must now secure 5 additional artifacts entirely in her own, meaning she still owes them 3 more. When Anastasia protests, Abe dismisses her cries, explaining that because she successfully brought them Rakiri, they have no intention of letting such a valuable asset go. Instead, she must complete this new quota and then bear children with a partner of their choosing to pass the slave mark down to the next generation before they will even consider her release. Despondent, Anastasia asks why her sister had to die for their sake, prompting Abe to maliciously reveal the ultimate betrayal. The historical narrative of a territorial war from 300 years ago was an absolute lie, as it was actually Abe's ancestors who initiated the conflict, usurped the Bernova clan's land and title, framed them for murdering fellow demons, and bound them to this eternal contract. Horrified by the realization that her sister and family sacrificed their lives for a fabricated sin, Anastasia is left frozen in despair while Abe laughs hysterically, making her reaction and comparing it to Tatiana's identical face of Hera. Unable to bear it any longer, Anastasia quietly apologizes and walks away, but Abe shouts off to her, reminding her that the magical brand will automatically force her to return to her master once every 6 months, making escape impossible. Anastasia departs the Pot's mansion utterly defeated, realizing she is trapped in a hopeless cycle with no way out, bringing an end to episode 8.